Any questions you have for me this week? Anything that you'd like to talk about? Any issues you'd like to address before we wrap up for the week?
Well, there was something on the with classical ethics, the lesson I'm on.
Okay.
Or a couple of the questions on the assignment. Well, okay, first the lesson is about the main different kinds of lives.
Right, right.
The vulgar,
Yep. I got it. Yep.
There are a couple of questions on the assignment that ask about the contemplative life.
Yep. Okay.
But he doesn't really even talk about it that much in that specific chapter.
Yeah.
Sort of, what am I looking for in the lessons? I mean.
Okay. Well, let's just go over that assignment together, okay? And then you can just wrap it up and basically submit your answers afterwards, okay? So let me open this up here real quick. All right. So just sit back and let me walk through these questions, okay? Just follow along with me, and then you can probably pretty quickly finish this assignment up when we're done, okay? So we'll walk through it. So this is for chapter 5 of book 1 of Aristotle's Ethics, and let's just go through these questions, and I'll explain the answers. The 3 kinds of lives that men live according to Aristotle, you probably know this, it's pretty simple, right? It's the vulgar life, the political life, and the contemplative life, okay? The life of the vulgar, the word vulgar comes from Latin vulgus, it just means common. It's the life of the common people, right? It's the way that most people live. So the vulgar life is the life of the common people. The life of the vulgar is described by Aristotle as being sort of a not immoral, but a life that is lived lower than the standard that human life should be lived. He says it's a life where the people live like cattle. They basically concern themselves only with the needs of their bodies. They're interested in pleasure. They're trying to avoid difficulties and pain. They live like animals. It's just a self-preserving, common life. And he says it's the least virtuous of the 3 kinds of life. So that's the vulgar life. The vulgar judge felicity to be the absence of pain, right? Pleasure is what they consider to be happiness. So as long as they can avoid difficulty, avoid pain, avoid losses of things, they consider themselves to be happy. So that's the vulgar life. Then the second is the political life. And we just have to be careful because we live in a democratic society and we think of political things in a way that, the ancient people didn't think of political things. Most of their states and cities were run by kings. They didn't have democracy like we do. They didn't have crazy democratic politicians like we do, just trying to get votes. So when they talk about the political life, they mean sort of the life dedicated to the pursuit of honor, to the service of the common good. I think it would be more accurate to think of the political life as the military life. Think of soldiers, working to rise in the ranks, to do things that earn medals and things like that, to gain pay raises because they pursue more dangerous tasks and things. That's the idea of the political life, okay? More like the military life in our society. Always competing to try and gain higher ranks, higher honors, higher awards, and so on. The political people judge felicity to be honor. They desire to be honored and respected and celebrated by their fellow men. That's what they judge felicity to be. They're willing to sacrifice, right? They're willing to suffer. They're willing to go into dangerous situations. They're willing to live in the field. They're willing to risk their lives. Anything by which they can obtain honor, they're willing to do. And Aristotle says it's a more noble mind, a more elegant mind than the mind of the common people, okay? So they judge felicity to be honor. How do they differ from the vulgar? Like I said, they're willing to suffer the loss of things. They don't necessarily seek pleasure. Whereas the vulgar can't do anything that doesn't bring pleasure. The political are willing to sacrifice for the sake of honor. Thirdly, what does Aristotle mean by the contemplative life, the third kind of life? It's a life that is more noble than the pursuit of pleasure or honor. And the reason why the pursuit of honor is not noble, according to Aristotle, is because honor is not in your control, right? You can do good works, you can do good things, but you can't make other people respect you or give you the honor that you deserve. So ultimately, people who desire honor end up frustrated because I don't get the respect I deserve around here. Well, that's the political life. You see what I mean? They do things for honor, and then they don't get the honor that they think they deserve, so they're unhappy. And that's why the political life is not really the way to happiness. The contemplative life seeks to be wise and good, to do good things and to seek wisdom. That's what the contemplative life considers to be happiness, to know the truth, for example, to understand things, to live well. And when we say live well, we don't mean live without pain or live with pleasure. We mean to live rightly, to live virtuously. That's what the contemplative seek to do. And what's good about the contemplative life is that it's actually in your control, right? You can choose to live well, to live virtuously, and no one can stop you from doing that or take that away from you. So the contemplative judge a virtuous life and wisdom to be happiness. And you can say that, well, Aristotle didn't talk much about the contemplative life. He talked about the vulgar life, he talked about the political life, but he didn't really explain the contemplative life. But this whole study of ethics is the contemplative life. You see what I mean? So he actually is going to talk most about the contemplative life because that's the whole point of this whole book, is to explain virtue and the contemplative life. So he talks a little bit about the vulgar life, he talks a little bit about the political life, and actually for the rest of this whole book, he's going to explain and teach the contemplative life. Okay, so that's why it may seem like he doesn't mention the contemplative life, because he's just getting started. That's the whole book. Number 10, the contemplative judge felicity to be a wise and good life. Okay, they don't care about honor. They don't care if people respect what they do. They don't care if people see what they do. They simply want to have a good conscience, to live knowing that they're doing what's right. That's the contemplative life. How does it differ from the vulgar? That's pretty simple, right? They don't care about pleasure. They're content to live without pleasure. St. Catherine of Siena is content to sleep on a stone floor. She doesn't care where she sleeps. She just wants to make sure that she gets up on time for morning prayer. That's what she's concerned about. So she's not concerned about pleasure or comfort or anything like that. How does it differ from the political? They're not concerned with getting honor. They don't care if anyone sees what they do. They don't set up a ceremony when they make a donation or anything like that. They just do good. Like Jesus says, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Do good for the sake of doing good. That's what's different about the contemplative life, how it differs from the political life. Question 13. What idea of happiness is Aristotle investigating in his work on ethics? He's seeking the contemplative life, explaining the contemplative life. Why does Aristotle say that happiness of the vulgar life cannot be true happiness? Because, first of all, it's beneath human dignity. It's a life like an animal. And secondly, because pleasure is not in our control. We can't control all of the different factors that can cause us to lose things or suffer things. Avoiding pain, gaining pleasure is not in our control. Why does Aristotle say that the happiness of the political life cannot be true happiness? Again, because honor is not in our control. So we'll just be frustrated that other people aren't respecting us as they should. Question 16, why does Aristotle say that wealth or riches cannot be true happiness? Because they're just means to gain something else. They're not ends in themselves. And so even if we gain wealth and riches, we don't necessarily have the things that we need, and so wealth and riches can't be true happiness. What is Aristotle's answer to the question, what is happiness? His answer is the contemplative life, okay? The life devoted to wisdom and virtue. Living in a state with a good conscience, where you know that you're doing what's good and you're seeking wisdom, that is actually happiness. And then so you've got to briefly summarize the content of the lesson, and then just let me know how long it takes you to study the lesson. So that's it. So that's a quick flyover of the questions for Chapter 5 of Book 1 in Ethics. Was that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that clarifies things. I think you had questions about the contemplative life, and now you can see that that's the point of the whole book, right? So that's it. So get that done, get that turned in. Don't waste too much time because I think it's pretty simple. So get that finished, and we'll be moving on to lesson 6 next week.